In 1955, the CIA chose the most deserted place on Earth to build a base. The official reason was to test spy planes. But here's what's strange. 70 years later, security guards still have permission to shoot to kill anyone who crosses the perimeter. What kind of aircraft requires such a level of secrecy for 7 decades in a row? In 1989, physicist Bob Lazar claimed under a lie detector that inside Area 51, he studied technologies that were not created by humanity. His clearance was real. The documents were real. But the story was impossible. Today we will spend 3 hours inside the most closely guarded secret on the planet, because the truth about Area 51 is scarier than any conspiracy theory. And it's not hidden in secret hangars, it's hidden in plain sight. To the north, rugged mountain ridges loomed, casting shadows over the salt flats and dusty earth. To the south, the desert rolled out endlessly, its surface fissured by heat, its stillness punctuated solely by the whispers of the wind. For centuries, this locale remained untainted. The pot people traversed its pathways, bringing with them legends of spirits that lingered amid the mountain's embrace. However, by the mid-20th century, this area saw few explorers. Sparse ranches peppered the broader region, yet Groom Lake itself stood in near solitude, as if time had forgotten it. Here, only the relentless desert sun bore witness to its existence. The remoteness of this place piqued interest during World War II, albeit briefly. The Army Air Forces adopted Groom Lake as a training ground for bomb operations, with bombers passing overhead, their shadows gliding across the pale surface of the lake bed. A rudimentary dirt strip served as an impromptu runway for the crews. But as the war drew to a close, activity diminished and tranquility reigned once more. Coyotes trotted along the cracked plains, while hawks circled lazily above. The desert, vast and indifferent, began to reclaim its territory. Yet, history has an uncanny ability to revisit forgotten sites. As the early 1950s unfolded, the Cold War intensified. The United States and the Soviet Union stood in an enduring standoff, each side casting wary glances at the other, apprehensive about concealed bombers, unseen missiles, and clandestine technologies that might shift the scales of power. Amid this buildup, intelligence gathering gained paramount importance, and conventional strategies fell short. It was in this climate that the Central Intelligence Agency and the U.S. Air Force sought a new kind of aircraft. The U-2, a spy plane capable of soaring above the reach of radar, was designed to peer deeply into enemy territories. Such an innovative machine demanded testing away from the public eye, necessitating secrecy, cover, and sprawling terrain free from prying eyes. The quest for an appropriate site took on new urgency. Maps were meticulously examined, and reconnaissance flights skimmed across the western deserts. What they required was a blend of isolation and accessibility, a venue where experimental craft could rise unseen, yet remain adequately supplied and staffed. When officials surveyed Groom Lake from above in 1955, the answer revealed itself. A view from the sky displayed the dry lake bed as a natural runway, hard and flat for miles on end. Mountains formed a natural barrier, concealing the basin from the outside world. The nearest populated area was a significant distance away, consisting of scattered ranches. The government already controlled the land as part of the Nevada Test and Training Range. Groom Lake appeared to have been tailor-made for secrecy. That summer marked the end of silence. Trucks rumbled down dirt trails, laden with lumber and steel. Temporary shelters sprang up, and a runway was cleared across the lake bed. Wooden observation towers ascended against the azure horizon, while a water tank provided a token of permanence amidst the otherwise transient construction. To make the operation more enticing, the CIA dubbed the site with a whimsical moniker, Paradise Ranch. In reality, it was a realm of harshness and solitude. The first employees arrived on unmarked buses with tinted windows, while others flew in on small planes that landed directly on the dry lake bed. From the outset, the demand for secrecy was absolute. Correspondents faced scrutiny, phone calls were monitored, and families received minimal information. Among themselves, workers avoided probing too deeply into their activities. The desert became both a workplace and a prison, its isolation serving as the most effective veil. When night fell, workers emerged from their barracks to gaze upon the stars, unmarred by the illumination of civilization. The silence enveloped them, broken only by the hum of generators reminding them of the critical nature of their mission, one that could steer the course of the Cold War. Despite the importance, the specifics remained largely unshared. The U-2 was the first aircraft to ascend from the lake's surface, its elongated wings stretching across the horizon, engineered to achieve altitudes never before reached. Test flights launched from the salt flat, climbing into the sky until they slipped from view against the blue. Each flight turned the desert into a cradle for machines that the outside world would remain unaware of for years to come. Locals residing far from the perimeter began to take notice. Strange lights flickered where none should, and aircraft ascended to altitudes never previously documented. Ranchers recounted sightings of silver objects shimmering in the sunlight, of contrails etched across the sky at impossible heights. Commercial pilots began to encounter unfamiliar vessels soaring high above their heads. The desert, once shrouded in silence, whispered new secrets into the night. For those in charge, these murmurs were advantageous. If someone believed they had witnessed a UFO, all the better. Legends were far easier to manage than the truth. To the CIA and the Air Force, the true secret lay within the aircraft itself, and Groom Lake offered an unparalleled shroud. Nevertheless, even in these formative years, a seed began to germinate. Each inexplicable sighting, each fleeting light darting across the desert sky, contributed to a narrative greater than the U-2 program. The workers thought they were merely constructing a new breed of spy plane, oblivious to the legend that was already taking root around them, a legend that would endure long after the specifics of their undertakings were made public. The desert, with its enigmatic charm, has persistently captivated imaginations. Its stillness is profound, its horizons seem to stretch infinitely, and its nights dance with the flickering lights of stars and satellites. Groom Lake's evolution added fresh layers of enigma atop age-old mysteries. Once a mere salt flat, it was metamorphosing into a theater where the dichotomy between secrecy and the unknown began to dissolve. In 1955, this location had yet to be dubbed Area 51. It was merely a newly established facility concealed within the Nevada desert where workers operated under vows of silence while jets ascended into the sky without acknowledgement. The groundwork was firmly established. The tranquility of the desert was supplanted by the roar of engines and the weight of secrets. Amid this blend of cloak and dagger maneuvering and isolation, a myth began to blossom. Chapter 2. Choosing Groom Lake. By 1955, the quest for confidentiality had reached a fever pitch. The Cold War had escalated. It was no longer a mere contest of dialogue, but a battle of technology and intelligence. In Moscow, Soviet radar installations were proliferating. Missile silos nestled within woodlands went unnoticed, and long-range bombers awaited activation on their runways. In Washington, the pressing question was how to surveil these developments without attracting unwanted attention. The U-2 spy plane represented the solution, yet only if it could be conceived and tested far from keen eyes. The Central Intelligence Agency, in collaboration with the Lockheed Skunk Works Division under the guidance of the ingenious engineer Clarence Kelly Johnson, spearheaded this endeavor. Johnson required a testing ground where prototypes could soar in utter secrecy, shielded from both Soviet spies and American journalists. He understood that even the slightest leak could compromise the U-2's operability before its time. Maps sprawled across desks in Washington offices, revealing a curated list of potential sites. Remote desert terrains in California, expanses of Utah, and sections of Alaska were evaluated. Yet none presented a perfect fit. The landscape was either excessively rugged or the distance from military installations too vast. Then, amidst an aerial reconnaissance of Nevada, Groom Lake came into view. From the sky, the lake appeared to be an impeccable blank slate, a dry white clay expanse, level for nearly 6 miles, robust enough for aircraft to land and wide enough to function as a runway without any need for additional paving. Encircled by mountain ranges, it offered a natural barrier, obfuscating the basin from inquisitorial telescopes and long lenses. Most critically, the lake bed resided within the Nevada Test and Training Range, land already under military jurisdiction, no ranchers to displace, no properties to seize. It was as if nature had sculpted a hidden base and left it waiting to be discovered. On paper, Groom Lake fulfilled every criterion. It was remote yet accessible. Las Vegas lay a mere 100 miles away, close enough for supply flights, yet distant enough that civilians would remain oblivious to the activities occurring. Adjacent to Nellis Air Force Base meant that Groom Lake could be masqueraded as a component of its training operations. And the nuclear testing grounds to the west conveniently provided a rationale for the region being off-limits. Kelly Johnson made a personal visit to the site. Standing atop the parched surface of the lake bed, he turned to his colleagues and asserted this was the place. His conviction bore significance. Johnson had overseen the development of the P-38 Lightning and the P-80 Shooting Star. If he deemed Groom Lake suitable, the CIA was poised to comply. Within weeks, operations commenced. Bulldozers began to carve a makeshift runway across the lake bed, while construction crews erected rudimentary structures, hangars, workshops, and dormitories. A modest control tower ascended from the dust, staffed by a skeletal crew. In total, only a handful of men were on site in those early days. The scale was small, but the stakes were colossal. Security measures were stringent from the outset. Signs warning of restricted access emerged. Guards patrolled the perimeter, though fences served more as a symbolic barrier than a tangible division during those initial months. True protection was found in distance. Groom Lake rested so far from roads and towns that no one could accidentally stumble upon it. The vast desert, stretching for miles in all directions, served as a natural barricade. Yet secrecy demanded more than mere remoteness. The CIA and the Air Force conceived elaborate cover stories. The base was simply referred to as a detachment of the Nevada test site. On official documents, Groom Lake was scarcely referenced. To the few individuals who inquired, it was framed as a site for munitions testing or was ignored entirely. Even its coordinates were obscured on selected government maps. For the workers, access began at McCarran Airport in Las Vegas. Each morning, small, unmarked aircraft transported them northward, tracing a path across the desert before descending into the basin. The flights became so habitual that they earned a moniker, the Janet Flights. Workers chuckled at the name, fully aware of the importance of maintaining the secrecy of where those planes touched down. The early days of life at Groom Lake were marked by rigorous conditions. The desert climate was unforgiving, with summer temperatures exceeding 110 degrees and winters that chilled to near freezing, winds slicing across the flat expanse. Barracks were utilitarian, food remained basic, and leisure activities were nearly non-existent. To mitigate the strain, the CIA humorously branded the site Paradise Ranch, a title designed to attract skilled laborers. The irony was not lost on those residing there. Despite the stark conditions, the atmosphere was charged with a sense of purpose that bolstered morale. Each day, engineers and pilots walked onto the lake bed, keenly aware they were part of something remarkable. They were constructing an aircraft unlike any the world had previously encountered, one capable of ascending to the edge of space to capture images of the heart of the Soviet Union. Each bolt tightened, every panel riveted, held significance that extended far beyond the desert. By autumn of 1955, Groom Lake was fully functional. The first U-2 prototypes arrived in segments transported under heavy security. They were assembled within hangars illuminated by fluorescent lights, their elongated wings stretching awkwardly across the floor. Mechanics engaged in whispered conversations as they toiled, cautious never to speculate too audibly about the mission. Test pilots readied themselves in hushed anticipation, their names conspicuously absent from any official records. The moment the first U-2 rolled onto the lakebed runway, Groom Lake underwent a transformation. Once merely a clandestine stretch of earth in the desert, it evolved into a launch pad for the most covert aircraft known to humankind. Even the designers were taken aback by the debut test flight. the U-2 ascended into the atmosphere with an elegance that belied its purpose, its wings bending under pressure before vanishing into the rarefied air. From the ground, it appeared to disappear entirely, yet the news of these flights could not be contained indefinitely. Residents in surrounding towns began to observe peculiar phenomena. At twilight, silvery forms gleamed against the backdrop of the descending sun. Airlines pilots occasionally caught sight of an aircraft so high that their instruments could not register its altitude. In that moment, Groom Lake began to leave an imprint beyond the confines of its barren surroundings. The Air Force deftly encouraged rumors of UFO sightings, suggesting it was far more convenient for the public to accept flying saucers than to speculate on the reality of a surveillance plane intended to soar into the stratosphere. This way, secrecy birthed legend, and legend served as a veil for secrecy. The choice to designate Groom Lake as the site of operations proved pivotal. In the years to follow, the base would expand, its hangars multiplying, runways lengthening, and security intensifying. New aircraft would emerge, each one surpassing the sophistication of its predecessor. Yet, in those initial months, Groom Lake remained unrefined and straightforward, a dry lakebed with a scattering of structures and the promise of forthcoming mysteries. The decision was made not merely to test an aircraft, but to cultivate a culture steeped in secrecy. Groom Lake was no longer an isolated desert. It had metamorphosed into the venue where the hidden narrative of American aviation would unfold. And with each flight that soared into the Nevada sky, the groundwork for the legend we now recognize as Area 51 was firmly established. Chapter 3: Black Projects in the Desert. By the latter part of the 1950s, Groom Lake had embraced its burgeoning identity. What initiated as a modest collection of barracks and a provisional runway was advancing into a facility functioning solely in the shadows. Here, deep within the Nevada desert, the United States engaged in testing machines that appeared to be years ahead of their time. Each brought forth the designation of a black project, programs so obscured that their titles infrequently surfaced in official correspondence, buried within budgets cleverly disguised as other endeavors. The U-2 was the first of these, and its triumph forever altered the landscape of Groom Lake. Ascending to altitudes exceeding 70,000 feet, the U-2 penetrated Soviet airspace undetected, capturing images of missile installations and air bases that had previously evaded scrutiny. For years, the U-2 granted Washington an invaluable strategic advantage. Nonetheless, its very success escalated the stakes dramatically. The Soviets were enhancing their radar technology, and every mission teetered on the brink of exposure. A new aircraft was imperative, requiring construction in the only facility suitably isolated and secure enough: Groom Lake. Enter the A-12 Oxcart, a project conceived in the early 1960s, controlled by the Central Intelligence Agency. The A-12 was unlike anything humanity had previously encountered. A streamlined Obsidian aircraft engineered to travel at speeds surpassing 3 times the speed of sound and at altitudes exceeding 90,000 feet. Testing such machinery mandated extremes of isolation, discretion, and robust infrastructure, which Groom Lake was only beginning to cultivate. The base expanded with remarkable alacrity. Runways grew longer, new hangars arose, and fuel depots and radar installations were established. What had once been a few ephemeral structures transformed into a complex still obscured from the outside world, but abuzz with activity. Workers frequently joked that Groom Lake had adopted the atmosphere of a company town, albeit without an actual town. Everyone operated on the same regimented schedule. They would rise early, commute on Janet flights, disembark in the relentless desert heat, and spend extensive hours testing, repairing, and analyzing. Yet, amid this routine, an air of mystery clung to the environment. No individual worker had a complete understanding of the operation. Engineers toiled on wings with no insight into the engine specifics. Pilots trained without knowledge of the radar system's full capabilities. Secrecy pervaded every aspect, each individual grasping only the fragments of information necessary for their role. The first time the A-12 roared across the lakebed, Locals several miles away mistook its sound for something extraterrestrial. To the uninitiated observer, the sinister black silhouette seemed alien, characterized by angular edges, a narrow fuselage, and twin tails jutting skyward like spears. Its engines unleashed a roar unlike that of any conventional jet, shaking windows in towns far down the valley. In the desert stillness, the A-12 was sheerly otherworldly. From the A-12 evolved the SR-71 Blackbird, arguably the most legendary aircraft to emerge from the realm of Groom Lake. Officially acknowledged only years hence, the Blackbird could fly faster than a bullet, cruising at elevations that surpassed the tallest peaks of the Himalayas. At Groom Lake, its matte black exterior shimmered under the desert sun, while technicians clad in protective suits refueled it with exotic chemicals. Once airborne, the Blackbird relinquished a trail of heat that glowed like a second dawn. Each new aircraft introduced further layers of secrecy. Employees were transported under increasingly stringent conditions. Their identities became obscured, with salaries hidden beneath accounting techniques buried deep within Pentagon budgets. Even the families of those employed at Groom Lake learned not to pry into their loved ones' activities. Many came to believe their husbands or fathers were engaged in testing conventional aircraft at Nellis Air Force Base. Few comprehended the reality that their loved ones operated within the world's most clandestine facility. By the late 1970s and into the 80s, Groom Lake experienced yet another shift, this time transitioning into the realm of stealth technology. Radar advancements worldwide posed a threat, jeopardizing the tactical advantages offered by speed and altitude. The solution lay in invisibility. Groom Lake became the proving ground for the F-117 Nighthawk, the first operational stealth fighter. The Nighthawk presented a peculiar visage, its angular and faceted surface resembling a jagged piece of art rather than a conventional aircraft. Rather than reflecting radar, it absorbed it. As prototypes first ascended into the skies above Groom Lake, civilian spectators struggled to comprehend what unfolded before their eyes. Lights shifted in motion without discernible shapes, glowing faintly before disappearing into the inky darkness. To those peering through the perimeter fence, the vehicle appeared as a flying triangle, silent and extraordinary against the backdrop of night. Once again, secrecy cloaked the operations. Reports of unidentified flying objects surged within Nevada, and Air Force representatives offered little in the way of clarification. Should the public choose to envision visitors from beyond our world, so be it. It was preferable to that which unveiled the truth, that America was forging a fighter plane imperceptible to radar, light years ahead of its competitors. Throughout these years, activities at Groom Lake remained shrouded in layers of denial. Maps frequently depicted the base as nothing more than barren land. Official spokespeople brushed aside inquiries with vague mentions of testing ranges. Employees entered into lifelong oaths, acutely aware that even retirement would not liberate them from their vow of silence. The desert functioned not only as their workplace, but also as their guardian. For those within, the isolation proved both a burden and a point of pride. Many later recounted the long nights when they felt truly cut off from the world, gazing out at seemingly endless stretches of desert. Yet they also vividly recollected the exhilaration of witnessing prototypes soar into the sky, being among the first to engage with technology that seemed poised to leap forward beyond its era. Groom Lake stood as a solitary entity, yet it was undeniably the epicenter of aviation's potential. By the conclusion of the Cold War, a lengthy roster of covert projects had taken shape there. The U-2, A-12, SR-71, F-117, and other rumored programs, still enveloped in classification, each left indelible marks not only on military history, but also on the imaginations of those who dared to glimpse them from afar. The desert sky transformed into a stage where secrecy unfolded in the dazzling spectacles of speed, altitude, and silence. What those beyond the fences could never understand was that they were witnessing history being forged. When a light swept across the horizon, it could have been the Blackbird slicing through the sound barrier or a stealth fighter lingering on the cusp of detection. To onlookers, it was an unidentified flying object. For those within the confines, it represented progress. By this time, the term Area 51 had begun to ripple through discussions, although few understood its meaning. It had merely become a label on a map, a grid square within the expansive Nevada test site. Yet, it bore significance, a hushed suggestion that something remarkable dwelled in the desert. Groom Lake had become interchangeable with secrecy, an emblem for projects concealed from the public eye, and for the delicate balance between national security and public intrigue. As the 1980s unfolded, the desert resonated with activity. The roar of engines pierced the stillness, accompanied by the thunder of sonic booms. However, for the residents in towns bordering the mountains, what they glimpsed hardly resembled technology. To them, it appeared as something beyond comprehension. Each new black project emerging from Groom Lake drove the mythology further into the realm of the extraordinary. Every glimmer in the night sky provoked further inquiry, and with every answer kept in reserve, the legend of Area 51 flourished. As the 1960s and 70s dawned, while black projects ascended from Groom Lake, the desert communities encircling the base began to take note. For the individuals living in modest Nevada towns, the sky was not simply an expanse overhead. Suddenly, that backdrop had transformed. During the night, ranchers tending to their livestock would gaze upward, seeing lights darting across the horizon. Sharp, bright points of white or orange zipped through the silent air, traversing expansive distances in mere moments. Occasionally, they glimmered steadily. At other times, they flickered, pulsed, and vanished. The tranquility of the desert only heightened their eeriness. Truckers navigating desolate highways recounted luminous forms skimming tree lines, moving faster than any commercial aircraft they had ever encountered. Farmers working in their fields spoke of flashes that erupted suddenly, lingered momentarily, then sped away toward the mountains. Answers eluded explanation, and when locals inquired of the Air Force, the response was invariably absent. By daylight, activity turned subtler, yet remained inscrutable. Silvery glimmers in the sky at altitudes unattainable by ordinary aircraft captured the attention of both pilots and passengers alike. Some claimed to have witnessed aircraft with wings longer and narrower than those in current operation. Others recounted angular silhouettes moving deftly against the blinding sun. For those unaware of Groom Lake's clandestine nature, these sightings remained a puzzle. Yet, for those secured behind the fences, they were merely glimpses of the U-2, A-12, or the nascent stealth prototypes. However, the veil of secrecy alters perception. Absent explanations, even the mundane acquires an aura of the extraordinary. Residents across Nevada began to exchange tales of mysterious lights. Some speculated they were merely new government planes. Others harbored suspicions that something stranger was at play, craft that bore no ties to human ingenuity. In the 1960s, the phrase flying saucer had already embedded itself into American cultural identity. Reports from Roswell and numerous other locales had popularized the idea that extraterrestrial observers might be watching from above. Within this milieu, the curious lights over Groom Lake seemed to fit into a more extensive narrative. Newspapers occasionally published articles discussing the phenomenon, frequently relegated to back pages or labeled as curiosities. Amateur UFO organizations commenced cataloging the sightings. For the first time, Groom Lake found itself linked to the discourse surrounding unidentified flying objects in the collective imagination. In truth, the Air Force contributed little to diminish this connection. Secrecy actually thrived amidst it. If a witness spotted a black triangular shape and labeled it a saucer, officials had no incentive to correct that perception. The cover story naturally established itself. It was far easier for the public to wonder about aliens than to ponder a spy plane traversing heights and speeds that exceeded anything officially acknowledged. Some of the most intriguing encounters emerged from the accounts of commercial aviators. As they soared over Nevada, pilots occasionally noticed crisp contrails slicing through the sky far above their cruising altitude. Passengers excitedly pressed their faces against the windows, eagerly pointing out fleeting shapes gleaming under the sun. Meanwhile, air traffic control logged radar contacts that zipped through the air far too quickly to correspond with known aircraft. Inquiries into these phenomena often met with scant responses. Incidents were brushed aside, documentation tucked away in elusive files. In the quaint town of Rachel, nestled just beyond the mountains surrounding Groom Lake, locals grew accustomed to phenomena that defied explanation. Night after night, they observed luminous orbs appearing low on the horizon, hovering momentarily before darting off at astonishing velocities. At times, several objects moved in unison across the still night sky, soundless against a backdrop of stars. For the residents, these occurrences were simply woven into the fabric of life in the desert. The heavens held secrets, and those secrets became a matter of course. By the 1970s, tales of these sightings began to spill beyond Nevada's borders. UFO enthusiasts, or ufologists, ventured out in hopes of glimpsing these elusive lights themselves. They congregated along dusty roads armed with binoculars and cameras, gazing towards restricted airspace. Many returned home with blurred photographs of brilliant spots against the inky sky, streaks of light captured in prolonged exposures. To the believers, these images represented undeniable evidence. Conversely, skeptics dismissed them as mere artifacts of restless nights and fanciful hopes. Yet what truly mattered was not the assurance of the images, but the enigma they represented. The absence of concrete answers ignited the imagination. For every local who surmised the lights belonged to government aircraft, there was another who contended they hailed from far beyond our planet. These tales proliferated, exchanged in diners, gas stations, and roadside taverns. They were recounted in hushed tones across counters and around campfires. As the 1980s approached, coinciding with the testing of the F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter above Groom Lake, the frequency of sightings surged. Its peculiar angular design reflected minimal light, yet when it caught the moon's luminance, it took on an ethereal quality. Chapter 6 unfolded with the unfolding saga of the government's denial. For decades, the most perplexing element of Area 51 was not solely the events that transpired within its confines, but the silence maintained by officials regarding its existence. As tales of bizarre lights and alien spies circulated, and Bob Lazar's assertions ignited worldwide intrigue, authorities remained unwavering in their silence. To them, Groom Lake was an enigma, an officially non-existent entity. In that very silence, the legend only grew more potent. The strategy of denial dated back to the base's earliest iterations. When the U-2 first flew out of Groom Lake during the 1950s, officials quickly recognized how effortlessly the high-altitude missions could be misinterpreted as something otherworldly. Civilians reported sightings of glinting objects soaring higher than any recognized aircraft. Locals recounted witnessing luminous lights ascend into the ether only to vanish. Project Blue Book, the U.S. Air Force's formal investigation into UFO phenomena, cataloged numerous sightings. In shadowy corridors, officers understood that the U-2 was the source. However, disclosing that information was impossible. Consequently, the reports accumulated quietly, and witnesses were left in perplexity. This pattern continued throughout the 1960s and 70s as the A-12 Oxcart and SR-71 Blackbird roamed the skies. Each time residents reported UFO sightings, the Air Force remained uncharacteristically silent. Acknowledging the truth would have unveiled the existence of aircraft still heavily classified. The silence was indeed intentional, a strategic decision shaped by the belief that it was preferable for the public to entertain theories of extraterrestrial spacecraft rather than to confront the stark reality of reconnaissance aircraft capable of soaring at 3 times the speed of sound. By the time the 1980s rolled around, the development of the stealth F-117 had rendered denial an automatic response. Journalists inquiring about Groom Lake were met with unwavering reticence. Maps depicting the region displayed nothing but barren desert where hangars and runways lay hidden from view. Employees at the base committed to eternal confidentiality, a vow that bound them not just during their tenure, but lingering long after their retirement. Even high-ranking officials were wary. Bill Clinton, for example, made a light-hearted reference to Area 51 in public discourse, yet declined to share any substantiating information. The official narrative remained steadfast. Groom Lake was off-limits for discussion. Yet, silence harbors repercussions. A steadfast refusal to acknowledge the base bolstered every wild speculation circulating in the public mind. Each report of an unexplainable sighting gained a layer of credibility in the absence of a counter-narrative. Each whistleblower's account gained potency when confronted with outright rejection. And as issues concerning health and safety came to light in the 1990s, that blanket of denial took an undeniable human toll. In 1994, a cohort of former employees lodged lawsuits against the government, contending that toxic waste had been disposed of in open pits at Groom Lake. Their claims asserted that hazardous materials were carelessly discarded, leading to serious health problems for those who worked there. The case escalated to federal court, where lawyers pressed for transparency regarding the substances that had been utilized. For these workers, their struggle was never about aliens or UFOs. It revolved around their fundamental right to know what had contaminated their environments. The government's retort was revealing. Instead of revealing critical information, officials invoked the state secrets privilege, arguing that disclosing the composition of what had been incinerated at Groom Lake could jeopardize national security. The Supreme Court ultimately leaned in favor of the government's position. For the former employees, the ruling meant they could not even confirm the elements that had caused their ailments. To the public, this episode illustrated yet another instance where secrecy appeared to eclipse human welfare. As the lawsuits captured headlines, the mythology surrounding Area 51 only deepened. If the government withheld something as fundamental as data concerning chemical waste, what else could lie hidden beneath their layers of secrecy? The denials intended to shield classified projects instead crafted a narrative wherein truth itself was imprisoned. Amid this veil of mystery, dedicated journalists like George Knapp continued their pursuit of answers. Knapp persistently filed Freedom of Information Act requests in efforts to unearth records pertaining to Groom Lake. For years, the responses bore a consistent message. No such site existed. No documents could be located. Nevertheless, satellite imagery conspicuously illustrated the presence of runways, hangars, and radar installations. Sightseers could traverse desert highways, glimpsing the base's indistinct silhouette across restricted territories. The discrepancy between the visible and the official denials rendered the latter increasingly hollow. Even within government circles, Area 51's existence was relegated to whispers. Employees engaged in related endeavors avoided uttering the name altogether. Memos would allude vaguely to the test site without naming it directly. It was not until 2013, nearly 60 years after the initial runway was cleared at Groom Lake, that the CIA finally declassified documents formally recognizing Area 51. This disclosure was subdued, buried within a broader release concerning the U-2 program. For the first time, the unmistakable phrase Area 51 appeared in an official context, inked in a government document. The acknowledgement validated what the world had long presumed. The base was indeed a tangible reality. Yet, the nature of this revelation was limited. The documents touched only upon the historical context of the U-2 and A-12 programs, conspicuously omitting information about more recent projects. The deeper secrets remained shrouded in silence. For certain individuals, this revelation felt anticlimactic. After enduring decades of denial, the confirmation of Area 51's existence appeared insufficient. Conversely, many found a different kind of solace. Conspiracy theorists, investigative journalists, and regular citizens seized the opportunity to point to these files, proclaiming that years of deception had been laid bare. Nonetheless, the acknowledgement did not obliterate mistrust, rather, it solidified it. Should the government have concealed the very existence of the base, why would anyone accept its assertions about aliens, UFOs, or cutting-edge technology? The entrenched culture of denial left an indelible impression on the fabric of American society. Area 51 emerged not only as a symbol of secrecy, but also of profound skepticism. To many, it embodied the divide between the narrative citizens were fed and the truths officials guarded. The desert installation stood as an emblem of the lengths to which some truths could be obscured under the guise of national security. Yet, despite all the conjecture, the reality of what transpired at Groom Lake was chiefly anchored in earthly matters. Spy planes, stealth aircraft, and drones represented technologies relying heavily on confidentiality for their success. In a peculiar twist, the denial mechanism proved effective. For decades, the world's most sophisticated flying machines traversed the Nevada skies, while potential adversaries remained in the dark about their capabilities. Yet, the price for this secrecy manifested in lingering suspicion and clandestine myth-making. By the time the government acknowledged Area 51's existence in 2013, the legend surrounding it had expanded far beyond anything mere hangars or runways could contain. The years of enforced silence had paradoxically done more to amplify its mythical status than any subsequent admission could hope to reverse. For millions around the globe, Area 51 ceased being merely a testing facility. It morphed into a repository of secrets, a domain where the act of denial itself served as the most compelling evidence that something extraordinary lay hidden from the world's gaze. The roots of this transformation stretched back to the 1980s and 1990s when Bob Lazar's tale of extraterrestrial vessels at S4 captivated the public imagination. His assertions sparked intense debate, yet they crafted a narrative that resonated with many. Not only was the government concealing something at Groom Lake, but that very mystery might encompass technology from beyond our planet. Hollywood eagerly embraced this concept, and soon Area 51 became emblematic in the realm of science fiction. In the 1996 blockbuster Independence Day, the base appeared as a secure vault for alien spacecraft, shrouded in secrecy from the masses. Millions absorbed this fictional representation of Area 51 through their screens, reinforcing the belief that the actual site harbored secrets of astral significance. Television series like The X-Files mirrored this narrative, showcasing Area 51 as a nexus where clandestine forces collaborated with entities from other worlds. Even comedic programs made nods toward it, positioning the base as a punchline, yet acknowledging its enigmatic aura. The timing proved significant. As the Cold War concluded, secrecy became less tethered to existential security and more linked to subterfuge. Public distrust of government institutions peaked. In this climate, Area 51 emerged as a vessel for anxieties and curiosities alike. If officials could maintain silence about an entire base for decades, what else might they be obscuring? Yet, it was not merely mainstream culture that perpetuated the myth. In the Nevada desert, a culture burgeoned along the outskirts of the restricted area. The small town of Rachel, situated on Nevada State Route 375, embraced its role as a doorway to the enigma. In the mid-1990s, the state officially designated the highway as the extraterrestrial highway, acknowledging the influx of tourists drawn by the legend. Rachel itself, home to fewer than 100 inhabitants, welcomed visitors with the Little Alien, a diner and motel festooned with alien-themed murals and memorabilia. Inside, walls displayed myriad photographs of purported UFO sightings, newspaper articles, and hand-painted signs inviting travelers to partake in the mystery. Pilots, truck drivers, and adventurers swapped tales over coffee, regaling one another with accounts of peculiar lights they had spotted glimmering across the desert night. For many, the journey became an experience in itself, traversing endless miles of desolate landscape to arrive at a location where the line between reality and myth blurred. Merchandise swiftly followed suit. T-shirts, mugs, keychains, and bumper stickers emblazoned with the name Area 51 materialized, transforming the concept of secrecy into a commercial brand. Alien head motifs emerged on storefronts and roadside advertisements, turning the desert into a dynamic gallery of mythos. This culture thrived upon itself. The more visitors flocked seeking extraterrestrial encounters, the more the region leaned into this newfound identity. The arid expanse blossomed into a pilgrimage site for the curious, the skeptical, and the fervent believer alike. As night fell, tourists parked along unpaved roads near the perimeter, vigilantly scanning the skies with binoculars and cameras in hand. They arrived from across the nation and eventually from across the globe. Some sought to behold unusual illuminations, while others merely wished to stand at the edge of the unknown, gazing at warning signs that threatened deadly force to trespassers. For many, the sensation of tension between what lay visible, fences, surveillance cameras, guards perched on distant ridges, and what remained hidden embodied the essence of the mystery. Simultaneously, Area 51's reputation soared on an international scale. Global media outlets streamed features on America's most enigmatic installation. Documentaries aired across Europe and Asia, casting Area 51 as a realm where the boundary separating conspiracy from fact dissolved. Tourists from abroad incorporated the site into their travel itineraries, weaving visits to Las Vegas with detours into the desert to catch glimpses of the forbidden. The culture of enigma transcended mere commerce. It evolved into a communal experience. UFO conventions, both in Nevada and beyond, routinely spotlighted Area 51 as a central theme. Panels engaged in debates over whether the base concealed alien spacecraft, experimental armaments, or something even more peculiar. Former employees, some disclosing their identities while others remained anonymous, contributed to the lore with anecdotal accounts of secrecy, rigorous security, and unidentified technologies. Each narrative, whether credible or steeped in speculation, wove another thread into the fabric of myth. Even the government's acknowledgement in 2013 failed to diminish the fervor. If anything, the admission that the base was indeed real lent credence to those who had long insisted on its existence. People surmised that if officials had concealed the base itself, they might also be obscuring the truths that lay within. Denial transcended to become a part of the legend, while acknowledgement merely shifted the parameters. The culture surrounding Area 51 reflected a deeper aspect of human nature. The vast and silent desert landscape incited wonderment. To stand at the threshold of the restricted zone was to feel diminutive against the miles of emptiness, to gaze at a horizon teeming with secrets waiting to be unveiled. The absence of concrete answers birthed a space for imagination, where individuals projected their hopes and fears alike. Extraterrestrials, advanced technologies, cover-ups, everything became conceivable within the stillness. By the early 2000s, Area 51 evolved into a metaphor as much as an entity. Politicians invoked the term to signify hidden governmental machinations. Comedians integrated it into their late-night jests, while writers evoked it as a symbol of secrets shrouded from public view. For a vast multitude, it embodied not only UFOs, but the very essence of an unattainable truth. The irony, however, lay in the fact that most occurrences at Groom Lake had their roots in terrestrial technologies, such as drones, stealth bombers, and advanced radar systems. Yet, secrecy possesses its unique potency. In the vacuum of verified information, the unknown cultivates its own existence. Area 51 became not merely a base for concealed aircraft, but a stage upon which cultural imagination unfurled. Today, the intrigue remains vibrant. Rachel continues to receive visitors, while documentaries continue to emerge. Books and films persist in portraying Area 51 as a captivating backdrop. The base continues its sprawling expansion, with hangars elongating and runways extending deeper into the arid expanse of the desert. Nevertheless, the true nature of its contents remains shrouded in secrecy, ensuring that the myth retains its powerful grip. Area 51 has evolved into more than just a physical location. It represents an idea, thriving not in spite of the absence of information, but rather because of it. In the expansive quietude of the Nevada desert, secrecy transformed into legend, and legend evolved into a cultural phenomenon. A visit to the periphery of Groom Lake offers not merely an entry into the desert landscape, but an immersion into an ongoing narrative, one that is still enveloped in enigma. By the summer of 2019, Area 51 had firmly established itself as a cultural touchstone. Its status transcended its initial identity as a secluded test site, transforming into a global symbol of myth. For many years, the shroud of secrecy incited rampant speculation. Movies, novels, and documentaries have cemented its reputation as the depository of America's most profound mysteries. However, no one anticipated that a playful jest on social media would ignite the largest and most peculiar public phenomenon ever associated with the base. It all kicked off on Facebook. In June of 2019, a college student from California initiated an event aptly named Storm Area 51. They can't stop all of us. The description was laced with humor, positing that if enough people rushed the gates, some might elude capture and encounter extraterrestrial life. It originated as a meme, a satirical reflection of the intrigue and exasperation that Area 51 had evoked over the years. The concept spread rapidly, akin to wildfire. Within a matter of weeks, millions had indicated their intention to attend. The slogan, "Storm Area 51, began to appear in headlines worldwide. Memes, cartoons, and parodies flooded social media channels, while people comically envisioned themselves sprinting across the desert in the Naruto run, arms extended behind like characters from Japanese anime. What started as a playful quip morphed into a movement, a curious amalgamation of humor, defiance, and genuine fascination. The United States military adopted a cautious demeanor in response. Officials issued reminders about Area 51 being an active military installation and warned that trespassing could pose significant dangers. Statements were disseminated cautioning against any attempted encroachment upon restricted zones. Yet, the more officials advocated for distance, the more the meme proliferated. The notion of everyday citizens rebelliously seeking to glimpse them, aliens, resonated with something far greater than mere jokes. It transformed into a symbol of frustration directed at secrecy and a light-hearted act of defiance against authority. As the date of the event, September 20th, 2019, drew near, media scrutiny intensified. Reporters flocked to Nevada to document the burgeoning excitement. Local authorities prepared for the influx of crowds. The minute town of Rachel, with its population barely reaching 50, suddenly found itself in the epicenter of global focus. Its only motel, the Little A. Lee Inn, became a gathering spot for inquisitive visitors, journalists, and aspiring raiders. The event evolved from a planned storming into something resembling a grand festival. Music, food trucks, and merchandise vendors set up shop. Two separate festivities emerged, alien stock in Rachel and a festival nearby in Hiko. Stages were constructed, bands geared up to perform, and alien-themed artwork adorned the desert landscape. What began as a light-hearted internet joke transformed into a tangible gathering, part protest and part celebration. As the day unfolded, thousands made the trek. They arrived adorned in costumes, alien masks, tinfoil hats, spacesuits, and wielding glow sticks. Some bore signs, while others appeared with cameras in hand. Journalists from around the globe captured footage of crowds dancing under the blazing desert sun. Helicopters hovered vigilantly above, documenting the spectacle. Despite the mounting excitement, only a handful of individuals actually ventured toward the gates of Area 51. A few made a dash towards the warning signs, playfully posing for photographs before security politely escorted them back. A couple were also arrested on counts of trespassing, yet the anticipated storming never materialized. Instead, the gathering maintained an overall atmosphere of peace, filled with music, laughter, and swirling desert dust. Ultimately, the significance of the moment lay not in breaching the gates, but in what it signified. For the first time in history, everyday individuals congregated en masse at the doorstep of America's most clandestine military site. They arrived not with arms or aggression, but with curiosity, humor, and a collective sense of wonder. Through this convergence, they transmuted a decades-old mystery into a vibrant global dialogue. The subsequent media coverage was extensive. News outlets heralded it as the world's most massive meme made manifest. Interviews captured the joyful tenacity of participants. Some insisted on their belief that aliens resided within, while others noted their desire to partake in history. The viral spirit of the event illustrated how profoundly Area 51 had ingrained itself in the shared imagination. Even those indifferent to UFOs were familiar with the name and its implications. Local communities experienced mixed reactions. Some welcomed the surge in tourism, while others expressed concerns about safety and the strain on local resources. Rachel, with its solitary motel and diner, faced overwhelming numbers. Still, for one weekend, the desert thrummed with music, costumes, and lively discussions. A carnival born from the bedrock of secrecy and mythology thrived. In retrospect, Storm Area 51 revealed more about individuals than about the base itself. It illustrated humor's remarkable ability to draw attention to long-running inquiries. It showcased how secrecy breeds fascination and how that fascination can unite millions, even if just for short moments. Above all, it confirmed that Area 51 had transcended mere geography. It had become a cultural phenomenon, capable of inciting a global event from nothing but a fleeting jest. After the commotion faded, life around Groom Lake slipped back into its familiar quietude. The warning signs remained in place, and guards continued their vigilant patrols along the ridgelines. Aircraft continued to ascend from the runways cloaked in secrecy. But for a fleeting moment, the myth erupted outward, attracting individuals from all corners of the globe to gather at its threshold. For those present, the memory lingered like an ethereal trace. Though they did not encounter aliens or penetrate hidden hangars, they found themselves woven into a narrative, an active participant in the evolving saga of Area 51. Snapshots of the crowd against the desert, alien costumes juxtaposed against majestic mountains, and music resonating through the night became part of the enduring record. The myth thrived, not solely within the confines of books or the reels of cinema, but in the exuberant laughter of thousands who ventured to challenge the world's most secret enclave. This gathering heralded a transformation in the relationship between people and the concept of secrecy. In an era characterized by immediate communication, a mere jest could galvanize legions, shedding light on inquiries that had languished in obscurity for years. It underscored the notion that even when evidence is scarce, the human imagination flourishes. In the case of Area 51, that imagination serves as the very lifeblood sustaining the legend. Historically, Area 51 stood as a bastion of silence, a chasm brimming with murmurs and conjecture. Yet in 2019, that silence was met not with ire or coercion, but with humor and camaraderie. The desert, which for so long was defined by barbed wire and shadows, thrummed with melodies, laughter, and brilliance. The gates may not have been stormed, but the myth itself was undeniably breached. From that juncture onward, Area 51's narrative embraced a new chapter, one that straddled the realms of secrecy and myth-making. The gates, though still firmly closed, stood as silent sentinels. The warning signs still blazed their stark messages beneath the relentless sun, articulating terms of engagement. No trespassing. Use of deadly force authorized. White pickup trucks quietly loiter on distant ridgelines, their occupants maintaining a watchful, muted vigilance. Cameras positioned on poles survey the austere approaches, tracking every movement with unwavering scrutiny. For anyone daring to tread too near, the base remains an active, guarded entity pulsating with intent. Yet, what lies within remains shrouded in secrecy. It is this dichotomy of known reality versus imagined possibility that energizes the legend. Practically, Area 51 remains a testing facility. Satellite imagery captures the emergence of new hangars, some proportioned to accommodate aircraft of unprecedented dimensions. Runways stretch long and linear, crossing Groom Lake's arid expanses, finely tuned for aircraft that operate cloaked in obscurity. Experts speculate that the base is now being utilized for the testing of unmanned aerial vehicles, cutting-edge drones, and stealth technologies poised to redefine the dynamics of modern warfare. These projects exist under layers of classification, their identities concealed within esoteric budget narratives. For those engrossed in military aviation, Area 51 continues to represent the epicenter of America's clandestine ventures. To the broader public, however, the site embodies even more than this. The narrative surrounding Area 51 has long eclipsed the mere facts of its existence. It has evolved into a symbol, an embodiment of conceptual intrigue, a canvas upon which individuals project their profound suspicions and the wildest flights of fancy. To some, it serves as a vault for alien spacecraft, wherein engineers endeavor to reverse engineer technology sourced from beyond the stars. For others, it epitomizes the stronghold of secrecy itself, substantiating the belief that the government harbors truths it will eternally withhold. In either interpretation, Area 51 has grown into something far greater than the parched desert that encases it. The myth persists, adjusting with the times. Recently, congressional hearings focusing on unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, have reignited public discourse. Navy pilots have recounted encounters with objects exhibiting characteristics beyond conventional comprehension, demonstrating speeds and maneuvers that surpass known aviation capabilities. Former intelligence officials have alluded to secretive programs buried deep within governmental frameworks, which may encompass recovered materials. Each nugget of information, however minuscule, renews fervent speculation regarding Groom Lake. If technologies of such magnitude indeed exist, the logical ambition would be to scrutinize them in the confines of Area 51. Whistleblowers further enrich the enigma surrounding the site. Individuals such as David Grush, who testified in 2023 regarding alleged governmental initiatives studying non-human biologics, refrain from directly naming Area 51, yet their statements inevitably converge upon it. For decades, Groom Lake has remained the stage for all conjectures surrounding secrecy. Regardless of the truth behind the narratives woven, the base serves as the most fitting domicile for them within the collective psyche. Even as officials present limited disclosures, the enduring culture of denial persists. The declassification in 2013 acknowledged the base's existence, but divulged scant information regarding current operations. Inquiries concerning contemporary activities are greeted with the same steadfast silence that has characterized the site since the 1950s. This absence of answers, more than anything else, nourishes the myth, for it is within the void of knowledge that fascination thrives. Simultaneously, the desert itself plays a crucial role in this narrative. To approach the boundaries of the restricted zone is to be enveloped by the sheer vastness of the land and the profound weight of its secrets. The air hangs still, the horizon stretches infinitely, and the mountains stand resolute against the sky. It is within this silence that the imagination is amplified. Every distant glimmer, every sonic boom, and every contrail inscribed against the azure sky becomes a signpost, a fragment of a story too expansive to fully grasp. The landscape itself invites enigma, and Area 51 provides an abundance of it. Tourists continue to arrive, pausing at Rachel, dining at the nondescript AA, and driving along the extraterrestrial highway with cameras prepared for the unexpected. Some arrive with the hope of witnessing peculiar lights. Others are satisfied simply to be present, relishing the claim that they stood on the cusp of the forbidden. The warning signs, the watchful guards, and the fences all serve as props in this ongoing play of secrecy. Few anticipate an actual glimpse into the inner workings of the base. The pilgrimage itself represents the experience, a journey to the world's most celebrated enigma. Popular culture continually underscores the legend. New films and television series keep Area 51 alive in the public consciousness, interweaving it into narratives of extraterrestrials, conspiracies, and cosmic mysteries. Documentaries revisit Bob Lazar's testimony, retelling his account to captivate new audiences. Even the realms of music and video games draw on the mystique of the base, positioning it as a sanctuary where extraordinary secrets lie concealed behind impenetrable barriers. Each new depiction ensures the myth remains vibrant, preventing Area 51 from slipping into the shadows of obscurity. Yet, beneath the myriad of tales and symbols lies the enduring reality of the base as a functioning facility. Pilots hone their skills, engineers innovate, and technicians oversee complex systems. Aircraft descend from Groom Lake's runway, unseen by anyone beyond the perimeter. The work conducted here is legitimate, the technology is cutting edge, and the shroud of secrecy remains formidable. But the lore that envelops it has become inextricably linked to the truth. To discuss Area 51 in this modern era is to delve not just into advanced aircraft and hangars, but into a tapestry woven with extraterrestrial speculation, conspiracy theories, avenues of denial, and the potential for revelation. The paradox presented by Area 51 is that its most significant contribution may reside not in technological advancements, but in cultural prominence. By remaining obscure, it achieves visibility unlike any other military facility has accomplished. Through its silence, it is transformed into the most discussed military site globally. Its discretion has birthed a legendary status, and this legend may very well outlast the circumstances surrounding its secrecy. As twilight descends over the vast Nevada desert, shadows stretch across Groom Lake, each moment filled with intrigue. The temperature dips, and stars begin to sparkle against the deepening sky. Beyond the distant mountains, engines could rumble to life, testing machines that remain shrouded in public ignorance. Alternatively, the night might persist in tranquil silence, the base settling into quietude. For those observing from a distance, the void of clarity proves to be sufficient. The enigma itself encapsulates the narrative. Ultimately, Area 51 resides at the intersection of mystery and folklore. Positioned within a realm where facts intertwine with imagination, its borders encapsulate not merely classified projects, but also decades of conjecture. Countless anecdotes retold, inquiries posed yet unanswered. Whether it protects alien technology, state-of-the-art drones, or simply ghostly echoes of past endeavors, the mythology has transcended its boundaries, becoming part of cultural lore, historical discourse, and a reflection of humanity's insatiable curiosity. Perhaps this is the reason Area 51 endures, not solely for what remains hidden behind its gates, but for what resides within us. The yearning to uncover, the eagerness to believe, and the acknowledgement that certain mysteries will perpetually elude resolution. This journey, from a barren lakebed in Nevada to the most spoken-about base on the planet, reveals itself as a compelling narrative. Whether it is espionage aircraft, stealth technology, or something far more otherworldly, the enigma continues to thrive. If you've managed to remain alert, thank you for joining us tonight on Dreams of Disclosure. And if you've succumbed to sleep, drifting into that liminal space between the fences and the unidentified flying objects, then perhaps that is indeed the finest way to engage with the mythos of Area 51. Rest well, and we shall reconvene in the realms of the unknown.